Hey guys, welcome back to another week. So we're starting week 8 now. Slowly getting towards the end, but let's make the most of these last 3 weeks. So first of all, I hope you all had a great week, great weekend, and that the last week you've been using all those plugins that we looked at. So the auto filter, EQ, chorus saturation, and overdrive. Hopefully there's been no dramas for you there. Now last week was a little more technical and we started to look at audio effects in a little bit more detail. This week, we're going to kick things off with something that I've found quite useful and I haven't actually seen incorporated in many music production courses as to how we can actually record inside of Ableton. So this way we can get all our own sounds. I know there's a lot of you out there that might be a vocalist, whether it's a singer or a rapper. There's a lot of you that would be instrumentalists as well, so guitars, drums, whatever it may be. And even if you're none of those things, you're going to find this very helpful in actually being able to create your own samples from scratch. So not using Splice, not using any sample packs, nothing like that. You're actually going to create your own sounds from step one. Now the first thing I'm going to go over is the equipment, which is not necessary for this exercise, but it definitely does help. So some of you might already have it, or some of you might be thinking about what equipment to buy. Essentially, this video is going to cover how you can use that and introduce you to how to set it up and maybe what equipment you should get if you don't have equipment. So what we're going to look at first is how to actually get audio inside of Ableton. So taking it from our external source, whether that be a microphone or an instrument, and being able to translate that from our external source into Ableton, into an audio track. The first piece of equipment I'm going to cover is an audio interface. We can also call this a sound card, but it's more an audio interface these days. Some of you might have sound cards built into your PC, which you use to plug in your microphone and your headphones. But audio interfaces are an all-in-one solution, not only being able to enhance the way your computer outputs audio to your speakers, but also to the way it goes back in through microphones and that sort of thing. So this is my audio interface here. It's a Universal Audio Twin-X Apollo Quad. So as you can see on the front, on the left, there's a little guitar symbol there. That's where I plug my instruments in, whether it be a guitar or a piano, and whatever other instruments take a 1/4" or TRS cable. And then on the right side there, I have my headphone output. So even though I'm showing you my specific model, it's going to be translatable to a lot of audio interfaces that you see. Because they're all, at the end of the day, they're all very similar. Some just have more expensive hardware internally. So this one here specifically has built-in preamps and a built-in processor. So it does a lot of the processing inside the audio, inside this interface itself, rather than offloading that to my PC or my Mac. The preamps also give me a different sound to what you'd get just plugging it into another interface or straight into the computer, so it actually processes it on the way in. And then I can customize those preamps with different warmth, and essentially it just colors the signal that goes in. So we're going to take a look at the back now. On the left there we have an optical in, so we can use optical cables if we want. Obviously the power, and then the Thunderbolt as well. The Thunderbolt cable goes out from this interface and into my Mac. Now when I was looking at audio interfaces, I did want a Thunderbolt specific cable just for the lowest latency, but most cables are going to use a USB cable, so it's going to be very similar, just slightly different. So instead of a Thunderbolt on the back, you'll probably see USB out, which I'll show you in this example here. But coming back to this interface, we also have the power, and then we have 2 line outs and 2 monitors. So the 2 line outs and monitors are all outputs, so they don't take any signal going in. They just output from the interface to your speakers or whatever you have set up. So the monitors can go to specific monitors inside the studio. Then you can have line outs that go to another set of speakers or whatever you wish to do. As you can tell by the size of the holes, they take a 1/4" audio cable or TRS cables. If you're a guitarist or bass player, you definitely know what those cables are because it's the same as, it's essentially a guitar cable. So this is a TRS cable or a 1/4" balanced cable. It's the same thing, just one end goes off at a right angle. For ease of use, especially on a guitar, I like having the right angle that goes out, just so it doesn't tug on the cable as much. But usually the TRS or 1/4" cables like this, they're going to be male to male. So there's not going to be any female ends on the cable themselves. It's usually the equipment themselves that has the female end. So on electric guitars, you'll see on the bottom right corner, they'll have the female end and you just plug this straight into it. And same thing with the speakers as well. You'll notice I included a normal 3.5mm headphone jack at the top right there, just so you can get a size reference as to what these cables are. So that 3.5mm headphone jack is the most common one, and you've probably all used these before for your headphones, where you plug them into your phone. Maybe not iPhones because they discontinued those, but if you have an Android or old school MP3 player, they all use that cable there. And these are what I use to go out to my speakers. And then on the right there, you'll see mic line 1 and mic line 2. So on this interface in particular, we have the option of having two different mic inputs. So those two are inputs, and they both take an XLR cable. These are the XLR cables, so you can see they're quite a bit thicker than the TRS ones. Now these cables here are mostly used on microphones and also speakers as well. On the left there we have the female end of the plug, and then on the right we have the male end of the plug. So unlike the TRS cables where it's usually male to male, this one does have a female and male end. And again, I've just left the 3.5mm headphone jack for size reference there on the right. And coming back to our interface, you can see where those XLR cables would fit into the mic and line inputs. So this was just an example of my UAD interface. Now it doesn't matter what brand you get, whether it's Scarlett or Steinberg or any of the others, they're all going to be very similar. So they're going to have quite similar ports like this. You're going to see microphone inputs with usually an XLR cable, and then the outputs will be TRS, and on most of them you'll get an instrument in as well, like the guitar on the front, which is also a TRS cable. So once you have it all set up and it works with your computer, I'm not going to go into how to install drivers and all that kind of stuff. You can figure that out on your own, and chances are your audio interface will come with some instructions in one way or another as well. Okay, we're back in Ableton now, and maybe you've noticed or maybe you haven't, but pretty much for the entire time during this course when I've been speaking, you can see this little green light lighting up here. That means the microphone is working, and because I'm currently recording into it and it's in line 2, that's what Ableton is getting the signal from. Let's go into our live preferences. So I'm just going top left here to live and then preferences. And I'm just going to show you how to set up so that you can get sound going from your audio interface into Ableton itself. That way you can record. So once we open our preferences, we need to go to audio on the left. Once we have audio selected, this is going to be different for Mac and PC. So on Mac, you're going to see core audio, and on PC, usually you go with ACO for all. It's like a plugin that most people use on PC. But if you need help with that, there are lots of tutorials out there. I'm not going to spend time going through it in here. So I'm just going to show you how to set up your inputs and outputs. Once you have your drivers installed and you have your audio interface all working, in your inputs and outputs, you should be able to see where that is. So if I use this drop down here, I can see my Universal Audio Thunderbolt, and then that's what I have selected for my inputs. So now I'm getting all the sound from those mic 1 and 2 inputs. If you don't have an audio interface, this would just be set to, if you're on a MacBook, it would be built-in microphone like this. And now, see down the bottom there, it's taking the sound from my actual MacBook internal speakers. So I'm just clapping there. I'm going to switch this back to Universal Audio. So if you don't have an interface, make sure you set this to the correct one you want to use for this exercise. So if you don't have any equipment and you're on a Mac, that's going to be the built-in microphone. Otherwise, if you're on a PC, laptop, or desktop, and you're using a headset or whatever it may be, whatever you've got, just make sure you've set this correctly to the headset or the built-in microphone. Even if you've just got a webcam, whatever you can use really. And then your audio output should already be set from the start, otherwise you wouldn't be hearing sound this whole time. So I just have mine set to Universal Audio Thunderbolt again, so that it comes out on my speakers. Or if I want to use my headphones, I set this to built-in output and then it goes through my headphones. So once you have your audio input device set, once you start talking or making noise near that source, so whether it be a microphone or your laptop, whatever it might be, your headset, you should be able to see on these two audio tracks here that one of them or both of them will have noise or input coming into it. So that green light will be lighting up when you make a noise. You want to make sure these audio froms are set to external in. They should be by default. That way you're telling these audio tracks to get audio from the external source. So whether that's a microphone or your laptop microphone, whatever it is. So once you've set your audio from to external in, then you can select which channel it is. So for me, channel 2 is my microphone and channel 1 is that little instrument port on the front. So when I plug a guitar in or my piano, it goes into input 1 with that TRS cable. and then that will start lighting up. So just make sure you got all this set and that you can see there's some sort of signal going into it. Now, if I set it to monitor in, you're actually gonna, I'm getting a bit of an echoing here, so I'm gonna turn it off. But when you set it to monitor in, Ableton is gonna play whatever's coming through that input out through your output. So if you start talking, yes, you'll be able to hear yourself, which is why I had to turn it off there. But it's definitely recommended to use headphones if you're using the monitor in, that way you don't get feedback. But if you're a vocalist or you're rapping or you're an instrumentalist playing whatever and you want to be able to hear what's coming out, what's going in, sorry, you want to set this monitor to in, and then you'll be able to hear the signal that's being flowed into the input. And then down here, we just leave this to Audio Master like most of the tracks. Hopefully that clears up a few things if you're wondering how audio interfaces worked and how to set them up. Like I said, you don't actually need an interface or microphone and all this expensive equipment if you don't want. You can still follow along perfectly fine just using your built-in microphone, whether it's on your laptop or I'm sure you've got a headset or something laying around where you can make some noise into it. Basically just make use of whatever you have so that you can learn the process as well. But that's pretty much it on the setup. What we're going to do in the next video is take a look at recording our own samples and how we can manipulate them and twist them to make them sound like what we want and to make them gel with our track. I'll see you in the next video.